You won't believe the secret hidden inside the very things you're currently cursing in your life. We all have them, those heavy, jagged, immovable rocks that seem to block every path we try to take. You look at your neighbor, and there, soil looks smooth, rich, and easy. You look at your own life, and all you see are obstacles. You've probably asked the sky, why me? Why is everyone else's journey a walk in the park while I'm out here breaking my back against stones I never asked for? But what if I told you that those very rocks are the only reason you're going to survive the season that's coming? What if your greatest curse is actually a sophisticated shield, designed by a higher intelligence to save you from a drought you can't even see yet? Now, let's talk about a young man named David. David lived in a rugged village tucked against the base of the mountains, and he was a farmer by blood and by trade. When his father passed away, he left David a small plot of land. It should have been a proud moment, a sovereign inheritance, but when David walked onto that field for the first time, his heart sank. It wasn't a field, it was a graveyard of stones. Big rocks, small rocks, sharp rocks. They were everywhere, while the other farmers in the village were turning over soft, black loam that looked like silk. David was breaking his plows against gray, stubborn granite. The villagers didn't hold back their pity. Poor Davy, they'd whisper, shaking their heads as they leaned on their sturdy fences. His father left him a wasteland. Nothing will ever grow there. He's wasting his youth on a pile of rubble. He should just pack it in and find work in the city. And David, he started to believe them. Every morning, he'd wake up and look at his barren perfection of a field and feel a hot, bubbling anger rising in his chest. He'd look at the sky and yell, "Why? Why did you give me the cursed land? Why is everyone else blessed with easy soil while I have to bleed for every inch?" He tried, Lord knows he tried. He'd spend all day hauling stones to the edge of the field, only to find 10 more beneath them. His seeds wouldn't take hold. His tools were constantly snapping. It felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke on him. But then, the atmosphere shifted. The winds turned hot and dry. A brutal, relentless drought moved into the valley like an invading army. The rain simply stopped. 4 months, the sun beat down with a unyielding ferocity, sucking the life out of everything it touched. The perfect soil of the other farmers started to betray them. Without the rain, their soft earth turned into a fine, gray powder. It cracked. It cracked open, exposing the roots of their crops to the burning heat. Their plants withered and turned to ash before they could even flower. The village wells were gasping for air. The successful farmers were now desperate men, watching their empires turn into a desert. But on David's rocky land, something miraculous was happening in the silence. One afternoon, as David walked across his field, he noticed something impossible. In the tiny, shaded crevices between the heavy rocks, the ground wasn't bone dry. There were small, glistening drops of moisture. It knelt down, his heart racing, and moved a large stone. The soil beneath it was damp. It was cool. It was alive. He realized that the rocks he had spent years hating were actually acting as sovereign shields. They were blocking the sun as a direct heat, preventing the water from evaporating, and keeping the earth beneath them tucked away in a cool, dark sanctuary. David didn't waste a second. He stopped trying to move the rocks and started working with them. He planted his seeds in the narrow spaces between the stones, tucking them into the shadows. He used the little water he had, and the rocks held on to it like a treasure. Weeks passed, and the valley became a brown, lifeless wasteland except for David's field. From a distance, it looked like a miracle. Small, vibrant green shoots began to erupt from the gray stone, while the easy land produced nothing but dust. The cursed land was blooming with a stubborn, magnificent life. When harvest time arrived, the village was in shock. David had the only successful crop in the entire region. He had plenty to eat, plenty to share, and plenty to sell. The people who had once pitied him now stood at his fence in awe. "How, David?" they asked. "Your land was the worst we'd ever seen. How is it now the only one that survived? David looked at his rocky field, and for the first time, he didn't see obstacles. He saw the architecture of protection. He spent my life cursing these stones, David told them, his voice thick with emotion. I thought I was being punished, but the Creator knew a drought was coming that I couldn't see. He knew I didn't need easy soil. I needed a shield. What I called a curse was actually my salvation. The village elder, a man who had seen 80 summers, nodded slowly. My son, he said, you've learned the most expensive lesson there is. We aren't always given what we want, but we are always given exactly what we need for the season ahead. David didn't just keep the harvest for himself. He shared it with the very people who had mocked him, teaching them that the price of access to a miracle is often found through a struggle. He became the wisest farmer in the land. Years later, when more droughts amassed, they always knew people would travel from across the mountains just to hear his story. And he'd always tell them the same thing. Don't compare your land to your neighbors. If your soil is rocky, it's because you're being prepared for a heat they couldn't handle. Trust the stones. So, as you sit here today, looking at the rocks in your own life, the health struggles, the financial blocks, the difficult relationships, I want you to change your perspective. You're currently paying an empathy tax to your own frustration. But those obstacles are not accidents. Maybe you're being made stronger for a battle that's still over the horizon. Maybe you're being taught a high-status patience that will serve you when everyone else is panicking. Your rocks are not your cage. They are your fortress. They are protecting your roots while you grow in the dark. Don't abandon your field just because it's hard to plow. The vibe shift happens the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, how is this happening for me? One day, when your harvest finally breaks through the surface, you won't just be glad for the fruit, you'll be profoundly thankful for every single rock that kept you alive during the heat. This story is a reminder that the sovereign plan for your life is perfect. Even when it looks messy, trust the process. Trust the stones, and most importantly, trust the timing of your own bloom. If this story helped you see your struggles through a different lens today, do me a massive favor. Hit that like button and share this with someone who is currently feeling cracked by their own obstacles. We're building a community of sovereign minds here who understand that growth is often a rocky road. Subscribe to join the silent revolution of faith and resilience. Leave a comment below and tell us, what rocks are you dealing with right now? And are you ready to stop cursing them? Leave the ward shield if you're ready to trust the process. The success of David's harvest didn't just fill his stomach, it began to shift the very gravity of the village's culture. You see, when everyone else is starving and you are the only one with a blooming garden, you suddenly become a sovereign threat to their old way of thinking. The villagers didn't just come for the grain, they came to stare at the rocks. They couldn't wrap their heads around the biological dissonance of it all. How could the worst land in the valley produce the most elite results? David realized that he had stumbled upon a law of the universe, the luxury of contrast. If his land had been easy, his success would have been ordinary. But because his land was a barren perfection of graystone, his harvest was a legend. As the years rolled by, David practiced a high status silence. He didn't go around the village bragging or saying, "I told you so." Instead, he spent his time in the field, moving with a calm, rhythmic grace. He wasn't fighting the rocks anymore. He was dancing with them. He had learned the price of access to a deeper wisdom. He understood that the drought wasn't an enemy, it was a filter. It filtered out the lazy, the entitled, and the lucky, leaving only the resilient behind. One morning, a wealthy merchant from the capital city arrived. He had heard rumors of the stone farmer and wanted to buy David's land for a massive sum of gold. "I have thousands of acres of flat, black soil," the merchant said, his rings flashing in the sun. "But I want this plot. I want the magic that makes things grow here." David looked at the man, then at the jagged stones that had once made his hands bleed. "There is no magic in the dirt, sir," David said quietly. "The magic is in the architecture of the struggle. If I sell you this land and you move these rocks to make it pretty or efficient, you will kill the very thing that makes it valuable. These stones are the only reason this earth is alive. You want the harvest, but you're afraid of the weight. The merchant couldn't understand. He was looking for a life hack, a shortcut to the gold. But David knew that sovereignty cannot be bought. It can only be built, stone by stone, through the empathy tax of hard work and faith. He turned down the gold, choosing instead to stay on his cursed land. He realized that being unavailable to the easy life was the only way to protect his hidden potential. Eventually, the drought broke, the rains returned, and the other farmers went back to their soft loam. They forgot the lesson of the rocks almost immediately. They went back to complaining about the heat and wishing for easier lives. But David never forgot. He built a small stone house right in the middle of his field, using the very rocks that had once broken his plow. Every time he walked through his front door, he touched the rough granite and whispered a prayer of thanks. He realized that his life was a sovereign vessel, whose like the cracked pot we discussed before is flawed. Land was the only thing that could hold the moisture of life when the world went dry. He had moved from ambitious but lazy to a man of unyielding action. He had stopped asking for a different life and started mastering the one he was given. So, as we look at the final horizon of David's journey, I want you to ask yourself, are you trying to sell your rocky field just because it's hard to work? Are you looking for a smooth path that will leave you unprotected when the next drought hits? The vibe shift isn't about finding an easier life. It's about becoming the kind of person who can thrive where nothing else grows. Don't run from your obstacles. Build your house with them. Don't curse your struggle. Water it. Because the day is coming when the world will be thirsty. We'll look to the person who wasn't afraid to stand among the stones. If you've felt the weight of your own rocks today, let this be the moment you stop fighting the earth and start planting your seeds. Share this with the one person you know who is currently shoveling stone and feeling like they're losing. Be the sovereign voice that tells them to keep going. Subscribe to stay part of this growing garden of unshakable souls. Leave a final comment with the word unyielding. If you are ready to embrace your rocks today, the shift in the village wasn't just economic, it was spiritual. While the other farmers were busy praying for the rain to return so they could go back to their easy lives, David was the only one who had developed a sovereign relationship with the heat. He didn't need the external world to be perfect to be successful. One day, a young boy from the village, the son of one of the farmers who had lost everything. Luck is what people call discipline when they don't want to admit they were lazy. David said, "Your father sees the rocks as enemies. The secret is the empathy tax you're willing to pay to the earth." Most people want a life of smooth loam. They want everything to be soft and easy. If you want to build something that lasts a business, a family, a legacy, you need some rocks in your foundation. You need the things that are hard to move. You need the problems that force you to dig deeper than anyone else is willing to go. He stopped selling his crops for mere coins and started trading his wisdom for the future of the village. He realized that his hidden potential had never been about being the best farmer. He taught the next generation that barren perfection is a trap. If your life is too perfect, you have no room for growth. The vibe shift in the village was complete when the elders decided to rename the area. It was no longer the mountain base. Te Kayit It, the Garden of Stones. It became a place where people from across the UK and beyond would come to learn how to turn their own cursed circumstances into their greatest blessings. Maybe it's a job you hate, a body that's failing you, or a past you can't escape. These are your rocks. You can be the perfect pot that stays empty, or the cracked pot that waters the world. You can be the lazy dreamer like Amir, or the sovereign master like David. The choice is yours, and the Steve's clock is ticking. Don't let the drought find you with an empty field and a heart full of excuses. You are ready to become unavailable to your old self and sovereign over your new one. Share this final chapter with the person who is currently sitting in their own rocky field, wondering if they should give up. Be the light that shows them the moisture beneath the stone. Subscribe to stay rooted in this community of unyielding creators. Leave a final, powerful comment with the word master if you are ready to rule your own land today. You see, we've spoken about the farmer, about Amir, about Steve, and about David, but I want you to stop looking at them as separate men from a storybook. I want you to realize that every single one of them is currently living inside you. You are the farmer, trying to balance your capacity to hold water with your tendency to leak energy. You are Amir, staring at the weeds of your procrastination while your dream seed gasps for a drop of discipline. You are Steve, looking at the closing gates of the treasury, wondering where the bloody hell the last 5 years went. And you are David, staring at a pile of rocks, wondering why life keeps throwing obstacles at you when you've already got a full plate. The sovereign mind isn't some mystical state you reach after you've finally sorted your life out. It is the act of deciding, right now, in this microsecond, that you are the master of your own internal landscape. Most people live in a state of reactive existence. They wake up, they check their notifications, and they let the world dictate their priority list. That is a low-status way to live. It's a messy, chaotic, and ultimately exhausting way to spend your limited time on this planet. When you choose to be reactive, you are effectively paying the empathy tax on your own potential. You are trading your sovereign authority for the cheap comfort of knowing what everyone else is doing. Think about the sheer amount of energy you waste on trivial noise. I'm talking about the energy spent worrying about what the neighbors think. The energy spent rehashing past mistakes that you can't bloody change anyway. And the energy spent negotiating with your alarm clock. If you could harvest that energy, if you could take all that wasted mental bandwidth and focus it on a single ambition seed like David S. or Amir, you wouldn't just be successful, you'd be a bloody force of nature. The barrier isn't your intelligence, mate. It's your lack of high status. Silence. You are too noisy. Your internal dialogue is constantly screaming, I'm not good enough. I'm too tired. Maybe tomorrow. You need to learn the art of the sovereign quiet. This is where you stop the external chatter and you start listening to the only voice that actually matters, the voice of your own discipline. When Steve finally became a master of time, he didn't do it by adding more things to his schedule. He did it by aggressively removing the things that didn't serve his purpose. He became unavailable to the things that kept him small. And let's talk about the rocks again. When people look at David's field, they see the rocks as a disaster. But if you're a sovereign mind, you see the rocks as a structural advantage. This is the shift. When you hit a wall in your life, a financial hit, a relationship breakup, a health scare, an average person collapses. They cry unfair. They blame the system. They wait for someone to come and clear the stones. But the sovereign mind sees the stone and says, right, what can I build with this? You don't ask for the obstacle to be removed. You ask for the wisdom to use it. That is the alchemy of sovereignty. It turns the cursed land into a fortress. It's about understanding the luxury of absence. Do you know why people don't respect your time? It is because you make it clear that your time is not a precious resource. It's a public utility. You're always on, always available, always ready to drop your own mission to assist someone else with theirs. You're a perfect pot, trying to be everything to everyone. And in the process, you're draining your own reservoir dry. When you start saying no, you're not being rude, you're being disciplined. You're protecting the harvest. You're guarding the garden. And let us be honest about the December fear, that gnawing feeling that you were not quite where you thought you'd be by now. It's a common affliction, but it's only fatal if you let it keep you in the shade. That fear is actually a signal. It is a biological alarm telling you that your current way of operating is insufficient for the destiny you were built for. Don't suppress it. Don't drown it in entertainment or junk food or mindless scrolling. Sit with it. Let it burn for a minute. Use that discomfort as the fuel to pull your first weed, to haul your first bucket, to turn your first stone. The beauty of this vibe shift is that it doesn't require a miracle or a lottery win. It requires a decision to stop living like a spectator of your own life and start living like the architect. You need to start treating your habits with the same respect you'd treat a royal treasury. Every hour you spend is a coin. Every relationship you keep is an investment. Every habit you feed is a seed. Are you investing in an empire? Or are you squandering your inheritance on rubbish that won't matter in 6 months? It's time to move past the stories. It's time to stop looking at the farmer, Amir, Steve, and David as legends, and start looking at them as mirrors. Because if you're still listening to me right now, it means there's a spark in you that knows this isn't just motivational fluff. It's the truth of how the world actually works. The people you look up to, the ones who seem to have the touch, they aren't magic. They are just disciplined. They are the ones who refuse to negotiate with the clock. who refused to let their rocks become their excuses, and who refused to be available to a life of mediocrity. You are at the precipice. You can close this video, go back to your tomorrow, and let the weeds grow over your field. Or you can take this sovereign shift and turn it into your daily bread. The choice isn't made once. It's made every single morning when you choose to get up. It's made every time you choose a book over a series, or a workout over a nap, or a difficult conversation over a silent resentment. It's a series of and these micro victories, when stacked, become a life that is untouchable. So don't you dare give up on that rocky field. Don't you dare stop watering the seeds. And for heaven's sake, don't you dare let someone else dictate the value of your time. You are the sovereign. The land is yours. The field is waiting. What are you going to plant today? This isn't about being perfect, mate. It's about being present. It's about showing up when you don't feel like it, doing the work when it's boring, and maintaining your standard when the world is lowering theirs. It's the hardest way to live, but it's the only way to live that actually means something. And one day, when you're sitting under the canopy of your own ambition tree, looking out over a valley you helped turn green, you'll know exactly why every rock, every minute, and every tear was worth it. Get your boots on, and let's get back to work, because the harvest is coming, and it's going to be glorious, but only if you're ready to earn it. Are you with me? If you are, then leave a comment right now with the word sovereign to finalize this transition. And share this with that one mate who is still sitting in the shade, dreaming of the gold, waiting for someone else to move the rocks for them. It's time to wake them up. Stay present and stay powerful. Stay sovereign. I'll see you in the next one. The village of David eventually faded into the mists of history, but the Garden of Stones lived on in the DNA of every soul that passed through its gates. You see, the most profound vibe shift doesn't happen in the field. It happens in the mirror. It's the moment you stop looking for a hero to remove your obstacles and start realizing that the obstacle is the hero. David hadn't just farmed crops. He had farmed an entirely new way of being human. As the years pressed on, the empathy tax of the valley began to pay off in ways no one expected, because David's land was the only one that thrived during the droughts. The village became a global sanctuary for resilience architecture. People from the UK and beyond began to trek up those dusty mountain roads. They didn't come for the grain anymore. They came to touch the rocks. They wanted to know how to stand in the fire without being consumed. David, now an old man with skin like cured leather and eyes that held the high-status silence of a mountain peak, sat on his porch every evening. He watched the young seekers trying to study the stones. He'd see them taking measurements and soil samples, trying to find a life hack for his miracle. He'd just chuckle softly to himself. You can't measure faith with a ruler, and you can't bottle the price of access. One evening, a young woman, a high-flying executive, who had everything but felt nothing, sat beside him. She looked exhausted, her spirit drained by the trivial noise of a life spent chasing a perfect loam that didn't exist. "David," she whispered, "I've done everything right. I have the perfect career, the perfect image, the perfect life. But inside, I am a desert. Why does your rocky wasteland feel more alive than my paradise?" David handed her a small, heavy stone. "Because, my dear, your paradise has no protection. You've spent your life removing every struggle, every rock that could have shaded your soul. You are a perfect pot that has never been put in the kiln. You're beautiful to look at, but you shatter the moment the heat arrives. You need some weight. You need the rocks to hold the moisture of your humanity. This is the ultimate luxury of absence. By being unavailable to the easy, shallow comforts of the world, David had made himself available to the deep, tectonic truths of the earth. He realized that the hidden potential of a human being is like a seed. It needs the pressure of the soil and the darkness of the earth to actually crack open and become a tree. As David's life drew to a close, he didn't leave a will of gold. He left a simple instruction for the village: never clear the field. He knew that the moment they made the path smooth, they would lose their edge. They would become lazy dreamers like Amir, or time wasters like Steve. They would forget that the architecture of the soul requires the heavy lifting of the present moment. The December fear of death didn't touch David. He knew that he wasn't just a man. He was a sovereign vessel that had poured its water into the right places. He had watered the ambition seed. He had respected the sovereign clock. And he had embraced the rocky shield. He was ready to return to the earth, knowing that he had left a garden of stones for the world to find their way. So, as we stand at the final gate of this 2-hour cinematic odyssey, I want you to ask yourself one last question. What is your rock? Is it the failure that haunts you? Is it the weakness you try to hide? Is it the cracked pot of your own character? Stop trying to throw it away. Stop trying to fix it so you can look like everyone else. That rock is your fortress. That crack is your channel. That struggle is your price of access to a version of yourself that is completely and utterly unyielding. The drought is coming. The sun is rising. The clock is ticking. But you have the stones. You have the seeds. You have the time. Become the sovereign architect of your own life. Don't just survive the heat, thrive in it. Be the hidden potential that the world didn't see coming. Thank you for being part of this silent revolution. If you've traveled with us from the very first snooze button to this final mountain peak, you are now a master of the garden. Take this wisdom, shield your soul, and go water your field. Subscribe to the Vibe Shift. Share this with the person who is currently starving in a perfect life. Leave a comment with the word sovereign to claim your place in the garden. Your time is coming. Keep believing. Keep fighting. Don't just watch. Go out and prove them wrong. Thank you for being part of the journey. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.